Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our Avoiding Holiday Weight Gain webinar. Just a quick note that the full recording will be made available to all registrants after the webinar is over. And as a bonus, we're also going to include a downloadable PDF of our Thanksgiving dinner game plan for you to reference as you're planning your holiday meal. It's a step-by-step checklist to follow for a foolproof, low-stress event. So be looking for that email in your inbox towards the end of the week. To kick things off with quick introductions, I'm Lisa Lavery with Foodsmart, and I'll be your webinar host today. I head up culinary development and manage our content for Foodsmart. I live in San Francisco with my husband, two preteen kids, and my English bulldog, Moose. For those of you who aren't familiar with Foodsmart, we're a digital nutrition platform whose goal is to make eating well simple. Joining me is one of my favorite people who I just happen to work with, Maddie Reeder.
Thank you, Lisa. And hi, everyone. My name is Maddie, and I'm a registered dietitian and a clinical account consultant for Foodsmart. I live in North Carolina with my husband, and our goofy pup Ghost, who is ready for the holidays and all of the treats that come along with it, just like we are.
Yes, definitely. So we're going to start off our presentation and then get into answering the questions that you all submit. Feel free to share them via the Q&A icon or in the chat at the bottom of the screen. We'll answer as many as we can during that section at the end. And if you have any general questions or need any kind of support, please use the chat. Claire, another one of my favorite coworkers, will be happy to help you.
During our time together today, we will share our best strategies for celebrating the season while maintaining a healthful lifestyle, including our top tips for savoring a balanced holiday feast, festive food swaps that will help you cut down on empty nutrients, and some simple tricks to navigate tempting holiday goodies.
Thanks so much for that overview, Maddie. And with that, let's get started by chatting about balance during the holidays. This seems to be such a big struggle for myself and so many others every year. Why is that?
I completely agree. And after all this time, you think, why is it still so challenging year after year? Honestly, I find that has a lot to do with the misinformation that we hear every single year. Sometimes it feels like every month, even, but especially around the holidays, there's some new methodology, some diet to try. And in reality, the best way to find balance during the holidays is to go back to the very basics of good nutrition.
I think that's a great point, Maddie. Getting back to the basics is key. Can you explain why balance is so important? It's always such a big buzzword that sometimes I think we forget why it matters.
Absolutely. So there are easy things that we can do to create balance. But before I give my answer, I want to poll our group and see what they think about balance during the holidays and what suggestions are the most helpful to meet their goals.
Right, great. I love a quick poll. So, our question is, what is the easiest thing you can do to avoid weight gain during the holidays? A, watch your portions. B, practice mindful eating. C, snack smarter. D, stay active. E, the always popular all of the above. Or F, why bother with all this cheese around? So we'll give everybody a couple minutes here to answer the poll.
I don't know about everybody else, but option F is definitely calling my name at the moment.
Seriously, that's my favorite food group, cheese.
Oh, yes.
All right, so thanks everyone for participating. Answers might still be coming in, but Maddie, why don't you share with everyone the correct answer?
Absolutely. So while F, why bother with all of this cheese around, is my favorite answer for the holidays, the correct answer is E, all of the above. And that's exactly right. All of those options alone are really impactful, but having a balance, back to our buzzword there, of all of those opportunities to stay well is really what helps you to keep your health in check, but also maintain your sanity during this crazy time of year. Not putting too much pressure on any one category is really important.
That's so amazing to hear, Maddie. And there's a variety of things we can do to feel our best during the holiday season, and you can implement different ways at different moments. With all the planning and events, I feel like focusing on myself can feel really overwhelming for me. And I'm sure everyone here on the call today can relate. So during the holidays, what's something easy that we can focus on to balance our nutrition?
During the holidays, I find that people I work with think of quantity when it comes to nutrition. But I think many of us know the importance of not overdoing it on the mashed potatoes or the desserts. That is a lesson that is told again and again over the holiday season. But I want to change it up a little bit this year, and I want to talk about the ingredient quality for a healthier season. Many key ingredients that we cook with during the holiday season are really high in sodium, really high. Things like cooking stock, pre made gravy, canned vegetables, canned soups, especially your cream of options, which are so popular right now. Meats and cheeses, those are your typical culprits for high sodium. And just a small amount of those items can put you over your recommended daily allowance for salt. And that can make you feel bloated and generally uncomfortable. And it can also elevate your blood pressure. And we know that there is some correlation between hypertension and your mood, your stress level, which is especially important when you have a full house of family members. And we all know that bloating and being in a bad mood definitely don't mix together, right? So, added sodium can also cause excessive thirst. And thirst is oftentimes mistaken for hunger in the body. The body doesn't differentiate between hunger and thirst, it just knows that there's a need for something. So, that can have us reaching for more food when in actuality, we're already full. We're just feeling that cue because of the amount of sodium we've had to eat.
That's such a good point, Betty. I always try to reach for a water or something else to hydrate
Mhm.
before I reach for some actual food if it's in between meal
Mhm.
times because oftentimes you're just thirsty. And,
Mhm.
filling up on a big plate with all the holiday fixins is usually the goal. We focus so much on what and how many items we have on our plate versus what ingredients are actually in those items when they're prepared.
Exactly. So I recommend choosing low sodium options where you can to help cut back. When cooking, try not to add salt to your foods where it's unnecessary to do so. So you can always add salt at the table when needed, but then it at least gives people the option to add it or skip it for themselves. And finally, I recommend trying to find some festive recipes like the ones on Foodsmart that don't call for soups as an ingredient. That helps to cut down on sodium in your overall portion size of your plate in a massive way. It's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. You don't need to rely on those creamy soups to
Mhm.
add flavor. And what I love
Mhm.
about these tips is that they're actually practical, which means you can really improve your nutrition with just a few simple swaps. And I'll share a few more tips and tricks a little bit later, but wonderful ideas so far. And while we're talking about tips, I need to make a plug for one of our most popular Food Smart programs, our Healthy Weight program. It is the perfect topic, if you're here with us today, to sign up for if you want a personalized solution to get through the holidays and stay on track with your health goals.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lisa. The holidays are complicated enough, and we don't need to make nutrition difficult. So, there are so many things that we can do here at Foodsmart with our Healthy Weight program to help you out and your specific struggles when it comes to all of the chaos of holidays, food, nutrition, and so on. Another thing that we don't talk about during the holidays are beverages. And sometimes it's not just the food that we eat that we discussed just previously, but it's not just the food we eat that does us in, but the beverages we consume can be the real troublemakers in our holiday scenarios.
Yes, during my day-to-day life, I'm looking at my desk right now. I have a coffee, a bubbly water. Sometimes, this evening I'll have an adult beverage on occasion, but during the holidays, it's like I turn into a different person. Hot chocolate, spiked cider punch, soda, eggnog, you name it. If it's festive and fun, I really can't help myself sometimes.
I'm laughing because I feel the same way. I am a multi beverage at my desk type of person that looking around me right now, I've got two waters, two different kinds of coffee, and a smoothie. So just imagine then you add the holiday beverages, and it's just a sea of cups at my desk at any given time. And beverages really give us a feeling of fullness when we have them that can last much longer than we realize. So, because beverages like hot chocolate, or cranberry punch aren't very well rounded sources of nutrition. you'll find yourself suddenly starving once your body has processed the simple sugars from those drinks and then overfilling your plate as a result. So the drink fills you up in the moment when you're sipping on it and it feels great. You don't feel hungry, but then as soon as you process it, you have that crash. And overindulging during the holidays is normal and it's okay to have those wonderful beverages. But doing so when you're misreading your hunger cues can cause GI upset, like bloating, and other symptoms like headaches too. So, my recommendation is to pay close attention to the drinks that you choose, but also how much of each you're having and when you're having them. The holidays are so special, and I know I'm not going to be without my festive cinnamon hot chocolate, but I will be watching my serving size of that hot chocolate and spacing it out between my meals versus having all of my beverages alongside all of my foods in my feast. And that will help me give some more balance by just spacing it out and watching the serving.
That's a really good point, Maddie. I love the idea of being able to enjoy what I like, but in amounts that make sense and that don't collide with the food choices that I'm making.
This leads us really well into our next important topic, which is monitoring your meals throughout the day. So I hear from folks all the time without fail, year after year, that they skip breakfast on the holidays so that they can overindulge for lunch and dinner, or that they skip the carbs at their meals so that they can eat as much pie as possible. There's a lot of swapping and trading out one thing for another in order to overindulge later in your day.
Yeah, I always feel like poor breakfast takes the bad rap when people do that intermittent fasting. They just cut it out and then they're just starving the rest of the day. Um, my main issue is that because I do 99.9% of the cooking in our house, I spend a lot of time in the kitchen tasting and sampling to make sure what I'm serving my family comes out delicious. And then when it's actually time to eat, I'm not that hungry, so I don't eat until it's all over and the dishes are done. And I'm sitting on the couch watching Elf for the hundredth time. But by that time, it's really too late to eat, but I kind of snack anyway. So, how can folks on the call get into a more mindful space when it comes to holiday eating?
You're exactly right. And the problem with this eating cycle is that you aren't giving your body the balance of carbs, proteins, and fats that it needs to function properly and feel satisfied. That actually causes more cravings and can lead you to overeat, which we know can lead to discomfort and can impact your mood and a whole host of other issues that can leave you down and out for a few days.
And you don't want to miss Black Friday. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
what you're saying and what I'm hearing you say is not to skip meals. So, what else can we do to help find some balance during the holiday season?
Correct. Avoid skipping meals to save your calories and eat at least a little something for every meal, both breakfast, lunch, and then, of course, the big feast for dinner that day. As I mentioned, try to avoid beverages that are calorically dense, but without nutrient density during those meals. So have your beverages in between. I also recommend that you have a fruit or a vegetable on your plate for each of the meals that you're eating. They're filled with fiber and they can help your gut, especially when you're eating a lot of savory, rich food, and also contain some water to help you stay hydrated when you're chasing your family around all day.
I really love those suggestions, Maddie. Most of us think of food during the holidays from the lens of counting calories and guilt around types of food. So, how can we shift that mindset?
Right. And it's hard to get out of that mindset, especially if that's something that you have associated with the holidays your entire life. But really, if we can let those things go and think more about how will this make me feel? Focus on the feeling. Is eating this way going to make me feel icky, good, tired, stuffed, uncomfortable? When you think about food like in that lens, then it's so much easier to enjoy these special moments in the time that we are able to spend with our loved ones, and we can get back on a regular routine as soon as the holidays end. So, Lisa, holiday foods tend to be so comforting and also high in fat and sodium, as we mentioned prior. What tips do you have for making sure your friends and family feel like they're eating a special meal without sticks upon sticks of butter?
Yeah, I totally feel you. During the holidays, my dairy drawer is packed with cheese and butter. But I do feel that there's a time and place for indulgence, and the holidays is it. But with that being said, I like to scan my menu and the recipes that I'm making and see where there might be some opportunities to swap in some healthier ingredient options where I can. Like you said, maybe not using that cream of mushroom canned soup and making something yourself to make something feel comforting. So here's a couple of my favorites. I love to swap sour cream with Greek yogurt. We always have Greek yogurt in the fridge anyway for smoothies, and I put it in my oats. And it's an easy way to get the same tangy, rich flavor in the recipes that you're using. But Greek yogurt has less fat and it's lower in calories and higher in protein, which will help you feel more full. And since I love multitasking in the kitchen, I like that I can grab the yogurt to serve in the morning for a light breakfast with a little leftover cranberry sauce swirled in, sprinkled with some toasted nuts or granola. And speaking of nuts, love to use those during the holidays. I like to swap the sugary, buttery crumble and streusel toppings that you see on all of your pies and sometimes your sweet potato casseroles and lean heavier on toasted nuts like almonds, pecans, and walnuts. They're very special during the holidays. They're also a heart healthy substitute that delivers on that satisfying crunch and flavor that we all are looking for. I sprinkle them on top of my mashed with sweet potatoes and over sauteed or roasted veggies. Another easy way to control the salt and fat that we're talking about is to put down the bottled dressings and make your own dressing instead. So, just 3 or 4 simple pantry ingredients can be whisked together to make a really balanced dressing. All you need is a neutral oil, acid. You can use some great vinegars, balsamic vinegar, sherry vinegar, little lemon juice or lime juice, a little bit of salt, and then something sweet. You can use maple syrup, a little bit of honey, just gives great balance, and it's really, really more budget conscious also. Since the table isn't complete without some mashed potatoes, I sometimes swap in a few cups of steamed or roasted cauliflower for russets in my mashed potatoes. Much lower in carbohydrates and calories, and really great nutrient option. And when I'm looking at recipes, not baking recipes because those are rooted in science and very specific, I usually cut down on the butter and salt by about 25% in most of my recipes. Just like you said, Maddie, there's always an opportunity to season a little bit later at the table, taste and add additional seasoning at the end. And lastly, try roasting instead of frying or sauteing as a cooking method. My go to move is to put the big baking sheet in the oven while it's preheating so that it's really hot when I add my vegetables. I toss them in a little bit of olive oil, some spices, maybe some dried herbs. And once they hit that preheated baking sheet, you want to hear that sizzle because then you know that you're getting that delicious golden brown crust.
Those are some amazing tips, Lisa. I know those have helped me when I've asked for your advice in the past. So I'm glad you were able to share those. But now let's pivot to everyone's favorite, the dessert table. Do you have any unique recipe swap ideas for the sweet tooth in all of us this holiday season?
I do. I said before, baking recipes are more rooted in science and you have to be really specific with your measurements. It's not quite as easy to freewheel, but I can definitely share some easy swaps that will give you great results. So, when you're looking at recipes for your favorite holiday sweet, you can quickly scan again and find areas where you can make ingredient swaps could be smarter choices. In most dessert recipes, there are 3 areas where you can look to swap ingredients for healthier options: your flours, the sweetener, and then the fat in these recipes.
This topic always feels the most overwhelming to me each year, and I think it's because of what you just said, that it's rooted in science, baking is anyway, and that can make those swaps feel like very high stakes, very high pressure. So I'll take all the advice you've got, Lisa. What can we do for each of those categories you mentioned?
Yeah, you have your tried and true recipe, and you worry that if you mismeasure, it's just going to turn out horrible, and then you're not going to have your favorite dessert. But there's really,
Uh-huh.
really some easy options, and especially now, there's lots of great choices. So first, let's talk about alternatives to your regular all-purpose flour. So first up on the list is whole wheat flour. So whole wheat flour is white flour's denser cousin, and it's ground from the entire wheat grain. And this type of flour will produce a denser baked good, but you can feel comfortable replacing half of the all-purpose flour for whole wheat in any recipe without changing the integrity of it at the end. And beyond whole wheat, there's a whole range of wheat and gluten-free flours you can play around with to add texture and flavor. Next up is spelt. Spelt is a kind of whole grain wheat flour that does a great job of mimicking regular wheat flour thanks to its gluten content and low density. Since it has a decent amount of protein and fiber, it gives a fluffy texture to baked goods. And again, you can substitute at least 50% of the all purpose flour with spelt in any recipe. And once you start to experiment with spelt flour, you can even up the ratio a bit according to your preference. It's a great addition to a savory pie dough. I love to add that. And then we have almond flour. Almond flour is made with almonds that have been blanched and then finely ground to a light floury texture. Unblanched almond flour is made from almonds that still have their skin on, just in case you were wondering. And its sister almond meal is simply just a little bit more coarsely ground. You can even make it at home or purchase in the baking aisle in most grocery stores. Almond flour is rich in protein, unsaturated fat, and vitamin E, and you can substitute about 30% of your all purpose flour for almond flour in any recipe. And last but certainly not least, oat flour. Oat flour is probably the easiest to substitute. If you've got oats in your pantry, then you've got oat flour. All you have to do is add them to your food processor or blender and buzz them until they're fully ground. Oat flour has a really great texture. You can even stir in some whole rolled oats into your batter for a little bit of extra texture there. It has protein and fiber to add health benefits, and its mild sweet taste makes it really versatile in your desserts. Reach for oat flour in your pancake batters, cookie, and muffin recipes. And feel free to substitute about 30% of this flour in any recipe.
I'm so glad that you walked us through all of that, Lisa. Flour is something that always makes me nervous when I'm subbing it out in a recipe, but the way you went through it is really helpful and puts my mind at ease a little bit in making those swaps. What other tips do you have for us for the holidays?
Well, now let's tackle the sweet backbone of most desserts, sugar. Pun intended there. Granulated sugar and brown sugar, sometimes both, are found in almost every baked good recipe. Their coarse grind adds texture and lift to baked goods, but we all know that they're not the best for us. So, in the interest of moderation, let's look at some alternatives to these refined sweeteners. So, first up is honey. Honey is a flavor powerhouse. Not only is it rich, intense, and syrupy sweet, the different types of honey are endless. From mild clover to dark, deep buckwheat, you have different options for sure. And from a nutrition standpoint, honey contains more fructose than glucose, requiring our bodies to burn more calories to convert it into glucose to make it a usable energy source. Honey tastes sweeter than regular sugar, so you can use less of it in recipes. Honey's great for soft, moist cakes and those quick breads that you might serve at a breakfast brunch, puddings, ice creams, and gelato. Next up is something that my family uses a lot of, maple syrup. It has a really beautifully thick consistency and an earthy sweetness that people really associate with breakfast, but pure maple syrup, the kind that's tapped from the tree, undergoes less processing than refined sugars. It also has antioxidants and minerals like zinc and potassium, and a lower glycemic index than refined sugars, meaning it's not going to lead to those spikes of blood sugar that can give you the jitters throughout the day. It is pricier than sugar and it has a very distinct flavor, so reach for maple syrup to make fancy caramels, candies, ice creams, and puddings during the holidays. You can substitute equal parts maple sugar for refined sugar in recipes. Maybe something that people might not have seen, but that's really great to swap in for that refined sugar is date syrup. A tablespoon of date syrup contains more than twice the potassium, calcium, and magnesium levels than maple syrup or honey, with up to 10 times the antioxidants. This type of sweetener can be swapped into recipes by substituting half of what the recipe calls for. So if it calls for a cup of sugar, you can use half a cup of the sugar and half a cup of the date syrup. I like to drizzle it onto my morning oats. It's really delicious. And last, we have coconut sugar. So, made from the processed staff of coconut blossoms, not actual coconuts. Coconut sugar has a low glycemic index. It doesn't really taste like coconut, so it has a mild caramel flavor, which makes it very versatile. It's excellent in candies and can be used as a one-to-one replacement in cookies and crumbles.
I love those tips, Lisa. And it ties in really well with what we talked about at the very beginning, that it's not always just about how much of something you're eating, but really having good quality things in your diet. So just adding different types of sugar helps to diversify all of the great health benefits that you can get even from your sweet treats. But One thing we didn't talk about is all that butter. What do we do to combat that part of our baking at the holidays?
Yeah, as we said before, pounds and pounds of butter are consumed during the holidays. And swapping out fat in sweet treats is actually really pretty easy. Most of the choices are shelf stable, so they don't take up valuable real estate in your fridge. Because I know during the holidays, I go to Costco and get the butter, and then I put it in my freezer just to have. But here's a few of my favorites that I can reach for in the pantry. So first up is coconut oil. So for any recipe that calls for butter, consider using coconut oil instead. Like butter, coconut oil is solid at room temperature, but it's lower in sodium, definitely. I usually reach for unsalted butter anyway, but coconut oil is a great alternative. It also has healthy fats that have been found to help lower cholesterol as well as aid in weight loss. Feel free to swap in a 1-to-1 ratio of coconut oil in any baking recipe. I usually melt it and cool it in the microwave to mimic softened butter. That way, it mixes evenly into your batter and it's not going to cook any eggs that you may have swirled in. Olive oil is a staple in any kitchen, from everything from sauteing to pan searing, but you can use it in sweet recipes as well. It's very popular in Italian cuisine. Oils provide much appreciated moisture to baked goods, but also can be mindful that some of the flavor of the olive oil will shine through. If you're looking for a good mix, you can use a 50-50 combination of oil and butter in your favorite recipe. And last up, we have applesauce and fruit purees. Applesauce, mashed bananas, sweet potatoes, and even avocado can all be used to replace butter. Much like olive oil, fruit purees benefit from butter's flavor and fat. So swap in half of the puree for butter or coconut oil, even in your baked goods, to get the best flavor, moisture, and texture. One thing to keep in mind, make sure that your puree is smooth so there aren't any lumps in your finished product, unless little bits of apples or banana are what you're looking for.
Lisa, this has been incredibly helpful, and I just love combining practical nutrition education with doable cooking swaps. It makes for a perfect pairing that doesn't feel overwhelming.
I agree, Maddie. It needs to be easy and you need to feel confident that the results are going to work. Besides ingredient swaps, though, do you have any other advice on navigating tempting holiday goodies? The dessert table can be really challenging, especially for my children. It's about eye level for them. They are getting a little bit older, though. They just hit the dessert table.
Yes, I do have a tip, and I think it ties back into how we feel about our food and nutrition. And I think generally speaking, most of us feel some sort of guilt around desserts and snacking during the holidays because we know that our meals are more savory and dense than they normally are. And having desserts and snacks just feels like you're pulling out one too many blocks in your big Jenga tower, and now all of your hard work comes crashing down all around you. There's also the pressure to appear a certain way during the holidays, and that adds to that feeling of guilt when that Jenga castle is at your feet. But nutrition just doesn't work that way, and I think that's something that we often forget during the stress of the holidays. One day or even one week of overindulgence or an atypical meal pattern for you doesn't make or break your health. You can always start again the next day and get back to where you started.
That's so true. If you feel like you went a little bit overboard one night, you can get up and go for a quick brisk walk in the morning. Maybe you walk the pup instead of somebody else. So, there's always ways to make sure that
Mhm.
you're staying on track. So what's the best thing here to do to get let go of all of that holiday guilt?
I know it's not as easy as it sounds to let that feeling go, especially because we oftentimes have trained ourselves to feel that way year after year for our entire lives. And for some people, we do want to try and stay on track during the holidays and feel our best. So we feel guilty about letting the guilt go, which is just a wild thing to think about. But my recommendation there in being able to let go and free yourself of that guilt is to think a step ahead. Think when you're eating a meal like breakfast, think about what's coming next so you know how much to indulge. That's a really great way to train your brain to not feel guilty about the foods that you're eating because you're thinking about your future goals and not getting stuck and ruminating in the moment that you're in right now. And then you can really enjoy the food in front of you. So if you're like my family, we have breakfast dessert during the holidays. I talk about this every year. So for me, for example, when I take my helping at breakfast, the way that I help to combat my guilt and that feeling that I'm ruining my diet is I make sure that since I know the breakfast dessert is coming, I make sure that my portions and what I have on my plate is really well rounded and appropriate and fun for me, but that still leaves space for that breakfast dessert that's coming right around the corner too.
Yeah, it's all about finding an equilibrium with food that works for your busy holiday schedule. This has been so helpful for me. I'm glad I attended this webinar. So, and I'm definitely going to make a call out for breakfast dessert for 2023.
Oh my goodness, yes, my family will be very happy to hear that. It's a thing on the holidays and otherwise, but it's always fun. So now that we're really in the holiday spirit and as we wrap up, we just want to take a few minutes to highlight how Foodsmart can support you now and simplify your healthy eating efforts this season.
So, Maddie, first let's chat about our amazing team of registered dietitians, of which you are a part of.
Of course. So, our registered dietitians at Foodsmart are experts in all things nutrition related. We work with you and create a plan that is customized to your lifestyle and goals. Whether you are trying to manage your weight, treat a chronic condition, discuss and work through an emotional relationship with food, or just find healthy dinner options in a sea of misinformation, our registered dietitians like me can support you. Registered dietitian appointments may be included in your health plan's offering completely free of charge. And you can click the link in the chat box to get scheduled with an RD today.
So, Claire's going to be adding that direct scheduling link in the chat, and she will be here to give live support to anyone that wants to book a visit right now. I have to say, appointment slots for the rest of the year are filling up quickly, so a heads up to book now to secure your spot. Next, let's talk about a few of the other useful tools that are available to you on the Foodsmart platform. One of my personal favorites is our meal planning tool. It makes it super simple to incorporate all the tips we talked about today. We have healthy recipes for everyone in your family, including holiday specific recipes, a huge database that can span every cuisine and flavor preference. There's even curated lists for recipes that can be made in 30 minutes or less, and budget friendly options because we're all looking to stretch our grocery budget during the holidays for sure. We also have an in app master meal list. So once you start making meals with FoodSmart, you can click the heart to the recipes that your family really loves to create your own personal cookbook in the app. And then using those recipes, you can generate a weekly plan that helps you keep on track in a matter of minutes. And then you can reference for those meals throughout the entire week.
At Foodsmart, we also integrate with Walmart, Amazon Fresh, and Instacart for quick and contactless grocery shopping if you're trying to avoid or limit your trips to the store during this busy time of year, like I know I am. When you create a meal plan in the app, Foodsmart will generate a shopping list of the foods that you'll need for the recipes that can then be added to your shopping cart with just a few taps of your finger. And that means your days of fighting people in the grocery store line to get that last can of cranberry sauce and completely losing it, like I usually do, are long gone. You can even compare prices across these different platforms to find the best deals for you and your family, too. So, not only do you get the opportunity to avoid the store altogether, you can still get the very best prices as well.
Yeah, and it keeps that poor person, that I have to task with heading back out to the store because I've forgotten something and they're going to miss the football game. That doesn't need to happen anymore. You
Uh-huh.
can also invite your household members to the family meal plan with you, and then everyone can view the week's meal plan, decide if they want to come home from their practice early to eat some dinner. They can share their favorites and even help with the online grocery list, and you can tackle food shopping as a team. Lastly, let's talk about our ongoing education. We love to keep our members engaged and help them form new healthy eating habits through our newsletters, blog posts, and webinars just like this one to help create a strong network of tools to help drive healthier eating decisions. And everything's created by our in house medical and nutrition team, Maddie and myself included.